In this lesson, we will add animator-friendly finger controls. Our current finger controls aren't too conducive for animation. You can see as we start to move the rotate X, Y, and Z channels, we're driving each root at the same time. So this is not flexible at all. How are we going to ever create a natural hand pose taking this route? So now that we have an idea of how to work with custom channels to control our fingers, we can take it a step further and this time create controls for each root, and then we could use channels like mid and end to drive the other sections, again making this rig a lot more convenient for animators to work with. Let's go ahead and get started by setting up our control first. Now remember, in level 1 we started to work on a repository of controls to create them much faster. So let's go ahead and pick from that repository. We'll go to File, Import. You'll want to navigate to your Assets folder, and here you'll find two control curves you can work with. I'll go ahead and grab the square curve and choose Import. Alright, so there it is. Let's go ahead and align it to the left hand, and once our controls are in place here, we could always mirror them across, get them cleaned up, and we can end by making sure that they're set up in a way where we'll have control over each finger. I'll go ahead and template the character, and with the control curve selected, we can go ahead and snap it over to the index finger. So we'll hold down the V key and the middle mouse button, drag right on top of its root. Next, let's go ahead and rotate this 90 degrees in the x-axis and start to scale this down. Also, it's easier to select. Okay, great. I think that will work out just fine. So once we've managed to find a size we like, we could always go ahead and freeze our transformations. And remember, you can always add these tools to your shelf. You'd simply hold down Control-Shift, head over to the menu, and then click on the tool, and now it's a lot easier to access. So when we go ahead and freeze this object down, you can see that it's only freezing down our translate channels. That's because of a tweak we made in level 1. But no worries, if we were to go back to our freeze transformations options, we could always reset our settings, go ahead and freeze this down. And now if I were to go ahead and undo, the tool that we've added to our shelf, of course, is going to look at whatever settings that we currently have in our freeze transform option. So if we were to go ahead and run this using the tool here on our shelf, take a look, it's going to behave the same way. Alright, so let's go ahead and duplicate this object, and we'll go ahead and snap it over to the pinky. Let's duplicate it once again, and we'll snap this over to our thumb. Alrighty, I might go back to reference mode just to double check and make sure that these are easy to select. You can take a look at the thumb, and you'll see that the curve can be brought up maybe a little bit more, so I might translate it up a bit and go ahead and scale it out a bit more. That's much better. Alright, great. So once our curves are in place, again, we can go in and freeze their transformations. Great. We can go ahead and work on renaming them. So the first curve we set up, that's going to be Anim L Index 01. I'll go ahead and copy its name. Let's rename the pinky control. So that's Anim L Pinky. Then we have the thumb to rename. So we'll go ahead and grab that and take care of renaming it to Animal Thumb 01. Alright, great. Now from here, we can always go ahead and work on mirroring these across. We have a few ways we can do this. We can always use our grouping technique. And remember, if we do decide to do that, we can go to Edit and make sure to go to our group options and set this back to origin, because that's what we want to mirror across to get a perfect mirror. Now, we don't necessarily have to take that route. We could always just go ahead and duplicate these curves and just go ahead and move them over. So we might just go ahead and take that route. But for controls like our clavicles, where we reshape them, you can see that this would probably be better to use our grouping technique for, because of how different the shape is. Alright, so with all three selected, I'll press Control D, and we can always just go ahead and move these objects over and snap them in place. So I'll go ahead and grab the thumb control. I'll go ahead and go back to template mode and hold down the V key and snap. Next is the index control. We'll go ahead and take care of that. And then finally our pinky control. Alright, so once these have been aligned, we can go ahead and freeze them down. We can now go ahead and work on renaming them. So it's going to be NMR thumb 01. Then we have the index and pinky to worry about. I'll go ahead and pause the video and take care of the others. Alright, so once our controls have been renamed, we can have them parented to our arm control. Let's go ahead and grab the 3 on the right side. We'll grab our arm control last, press the P key. Great, now you'll see that they have not been recolored. Sometimes when we parent our objects to another object that has been recolored, you'll notice that that set of objects does get recolored. Now what regulates this? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. If we were to head over to our attribute editor, take a look. We can recolor from our shape node, or we can recolor from the transform node. Now when we recolor from the transform node, it's actually going to recolor all child objects. So let's go ahead and test this out. If we were to go ahead and grab our main arm control here, and if we were to go to its first tab, the transform node, and if we were to go to display, drawing overrides, and recolor this red, let's go ahead and find that color, you'll see that all of those objects will now be recolored. Now once they get unparented, they revert back to the color they were originally. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we can do the same thing on the left side. We can go ahead and select our controls here, parent to our arm control. You'll see that we'll need to go ahead and grab the arm control and make sure that it's recolored from its transform node. Let's go ahead and find that color blue. There it is. And there we go. So we'll save a little bit of time that way. Alright, now it's time to work on removing the channels we will not use. So we're just going to keep our rotate channels, and then we'll want to also add custom channels for the mid and end sections of the fingers. So let's go ahead and select all 6 controls. Alright, so just one more to select. And now we'll go ahead and highlight our translate, scale, and visibility channels. We'll go ahead and right click and choose lock and hide selected. Alright, great. So it's very clear that you should only rotate, and then we'll set up mid and end parameters to control the mid and end sections. Let's go ahead and do that now. And we could always go ahead and stop the lesson after this and finish setting up the finger rig in the following lesson. So we'll just go ahead and grab each finger control. Let's head over to modify, add attribute. Could always work with a float type. And the displayable channel, actually we're going to go ahead and name that extra controls. I was going to name that follow, but they're not really following anything except for, of course, the object we parented them to, so follow would be pointless. So I'll just go ahead and name this extra controls. We'll make this displayable, and we'll choose add. And we know why we're working with a float type, because now we're needing to tweak a float value to control the mid and end sections. So you can see the issue with working with an enumerated type. It's really straightforward, but I just wanted to make that clear. All right, so now let's go ahead and name our next channel that will be keyable. We'll name that mid. We won't give it any limits, and we'll go ahead and choose add. We just have one more to add, and that's going to be a channel named end. So we'll just choose OK, and we're good to go. All right, so we'll go ahead and stop our lesson here, and in the next lesson we'll finish our finger rig.